Hello and a warm welcome to Embracer's annual general meeting. My name is Simon Jönsson, analyst at ABG. Today's agenda is as followed: a presentation by Johan and Lars, followed by a presentation by Gearbox head Randy Pitchford. Then we will hear from Emma Ihre, head of sustainability, Michael and Cedric from Asmodee, and market insights from Newzoo expert Tom. To finish off, I will be back with a Q&A. That said, I leave the floor to Kiki.
Thank you, Simon. And dear shareholders, a very warm welcome to Embracer's 2022 annual general meeting. And of course, very welcome to Karlstad. It means a lot for us to see you all here in person, and of course also everyone that is participating on the web. Now, everyone here representing Embracer today, we believe this is a very important event because it gives us a unique opportunity to actually discuss with all of you the last year, Embracer's past year. Now, as you maybe have noticed, it has become a tradition to hold the annual general meeting here in Karlstad, and also now in this beautiful museum. And if you have the chance, you should actually go and see. There are so many stories about the history of Värmland in this museum. But not only is Karlstad the capital of Värmland, but the whole region here is actually considered to be the crown jewel of Sweden, if you didn't know it already. A fitting home, really, to Embracer Group's headquarters. Now, most of you probably also know that there is an expression that the sun always shines in Karlstad. I guess you heard that before. And I would like to think that a bit of that sun shines down on us. Embracer is now the most diversified gaming and entertainment company in Europe. We have leading and growing positions in PC, console, mobile, and tabletop. So all I can say, where are my sunglasses? But Embracer is much more than that. We are a global company with values and integrity that reach out to almost all corners of the world. Now, as you all know, the world looks very different compared to when we met a year ago. The start of 2022 has been dark, and for the very first time since the Second World War, we now have a big war in Europe. That, of course, affects us in different ways. All of us are all affected, and that has now gone on for 6 or more than 7 months. And unfortunately, it seems that it will continue for an unknown future. When this horrible war broke out in Ukraine, many of our Eastern European studios were directly affected. And as an organization, we saw firsthand the personal struggles to many of our that created for many of our people. And I personally talked to many of them, employees in Ukraine, in Russia, Hungary, Serbia, and Croatia, and many more. And all of them had stories to tell. And they talked about their families and their friends. Many stories were heartwarming, but most stories were very heartbreaking and simply unbearable to think about. I have to say that I'm extremely proud and humble how we all came together and responded. With lots of hard work, willingness, many companies and employees across our entire organization cared for the safety of our people and their families. And in my opinion, it absolutely reflects the thoughtful and responsible nature of our corporate culture, and is a fine demonstration how the organization is made up by strong, independently driven people who make great things happen. Now, as we close the books for our financial year 21-22, and despite the pandemic we had to face throughout last year, we can look back at another stable and eventful period for Embracer. If you recall last year's AGM, Lars presented a strategy to further widen the scope of our operations. And I just want to take a moment to highlight a few of those developments from last year that we from the board sees reinforce that strategy. First of all, sales and profits grew significantly. We welcomed many new companies to the Embracer family through strategic, transformative acquisition, bringing scale, new revenue streams, new strategic opportunities, and also redefining the direction of our gaming ecosystem. And you will hear much more about this from Lars later today. We have also invested heavily in our games pipeline to drive future organic growth. And we also continued our sustainability journey. And the highlight last year was, of course, that we hired a head of sustainability with lots of and long experience in sustainability and finance. And last but not least, we also further developed the group's governance structures. But in addition to all this, we also had the process, as you are very well aware of, about to change the listing venue to the main market at Stockholm, Nasdaq Stockholm, before the end of this year. And that, if anything, triggered the need to comply with stricter requirements. And you will hear later as well where we are in that process, because it's getting closer. And a big part of that effort was, of course, the transfer of our reporting to IFRS. And the board is very proud of the organization that has completed the largest IFRS conversion ever in Sweden. What all this ties together is Embracer's decentralized model. And it's all about empowering great people. As you know very well, many of the entrepreneurs that join our family also become shareholders of the company. And it is a huge benefit to have such many shareholders operationally active. They are very ambitious, they are skilled, and they share our long-term commitment to building something lasting and extraordinary. And this partnerships acts as the foundation for which our values and governance model was built. And finally, to conclude, I want to acknowledge a part of the organization that is closest to my heart, and that is, of course, all our great people. During the 6 years I have been with the company, it's almost 6 years, I have traveled and I've met many of our employees in many places. I've gotten to know them quite well, I think. And if I should just describe them with a few words, I would say they are an extremely dynamic and passionate group of people. And they have helped define this company to what we are today. And I can say with strong confidence that with them, we can look forward to delivering even more joy and entertainment to millions of players worldwide. And with that, I would like to declare Embracer's 2022 Annual General Meeting open. And I will start with the question. And the question to you is, see where I have the question. Here I have it. The question is, the board, it's maybe late to ask this, but the board has proposed that this meeting should be in English. And that is, of course, for everyone to understand what we're talking about, also on the web. So my question is if we can agree to hold this meeting in English. Great, thank you. Now, we will also hold a public Q&A session during the presentation when we present the business activities later. And this Q&A session will only be open during that specific presentation, just so that you know. Now, the first point we have is then to elect the chair of the meeting. And I have to also make sure we have the right slides up here. The board of directors, they have proposed that I'm elected to chair the meeting here today. And that has also been published in the notice on the 18th of August. And I'm wondering if there are any other proposals. No? Can we elect me to be the chair of today's meeting then? Thank you for the confidence. Due to other things, including the webcast, there are several unregistered shareholders and guests at the premises here today, and also participating remotely. And can we invite these to attend the meeting? Of course, I have to point out that in addition to the company's representatives that we also have here today and the auditor, there are only shareholders who are here in person, by proxy, or cast their vote in advance that are entered into the share register with representatives and assistants who have registers that have the right to speak, vote, and give proposals to the meeting. Very long sentence you wrote to me, Jan. Thank you. But during the Q&A, we will, however, allow everyone present at the meeting and remotely to be able to ask questions. Can we agree on that? Thank you. I have next to me here is Ian Gulam, has been here with me for many years now. Ian is the Chief of Staff and the General Counsel, and he's here to keep the minutes from this meeting. I also would like to inform you about the executives in the company that we have here today. And in addition to me, from the board, we have, and I will present them a little bit more in depth later, but we also have David Gardner from our board, and we have Jakob Jonmyren, and we also have Erik Stenberg, and Lars Wingefors is here, thank God. We have also the company's auditor, EY, is present here through the company as the main responsible auditor, and that is Johan Eklund, that we will meet later, yeah. Okay, we have now come to item number 3 and on the agenda, and that is preparation and approval of the voting list. And I would like to leave it over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Kiki. And as everyone that met me at the door, I have checked everyone off that has been notified prior to the meeting to attend. And I will not keep this long and just say that 2 people might have snuck in without me noticing, so I just want to say their names. Marta and Sven Bäckström. Are you here? No? Okay. Good. I'm just going to recalculate a bit, and then I'm going to give you the numbers. So, to summarize, everyone that has been entered into the share register and notified their participation as set out in the notice, and also been checked off here today. We today have in total 579,792,811 shares present. Of that, 52,260,204 are A shares, and 527,532,607 are B shares. This sums up to 46.77% of the number of shares in the company and 57.04% of the number of votes in the company.
Thank you, Ian. Can we approve the prepared voting list then? Yes. Now we come to item number 4 on the agenda, and we will appoint 1 or 2 persons to certify the minutes. And do we have any suggestions? Thank you. Are there any more suggestions? Okay, I find that's not the case. Can the annual general meeting resolve to appoint 1 person to certify the minutes? Yes. And I would like to ask Jimmy then. Where is Jimmy? There, up there. If you are prepared to actually verify the minutes, maybe today as well before you're leaving. Great, thank you. Can we resolve then to appoint Jimmy together with the chairman to certify today's minutes in accordance with the proposal? Yes. We have now come to item number 5 on the agenda, and that is a question whether the meeting has been duly convened. Can you explain to us, Ian?
Absolutely. The notice for the annual meeting shall be published on the company's website no later than 4 weeks prior to the meeting, and at the earliest 6 weeks prior to the meeting. And at the same time, the notice must be published in the Swedish official Gazette, Post- och Inrikestidningar in Swedish. And at the same time, an ad must be published in Svenska Dagbladet. The notice was published 18th of August on the website, and the ad in Svenska Dagbladet and the notice in the Swedish official Gazette was published in the respective newspaper on 23rd of August this year. And the prerequisite for notice and convening the meeting are therefore fulfilled.
Yeah, great, thank you. Does the meeting then consider that this meeting has been duly convened? Now we have the approval of the agenda, and the proposal for the agenda have been announced in the notice, and it has also distributed to the participants here at the meeting today. Can we resolve to determine the proposed agenda? Yes. Thank you. I find that the agenda has been approved. We will now hold the presentation of the operations in the group. And so I would therefore like to ask Lars, our CEO, Lars Wingefors, and also Johan Ekström, our CFO, to take the stage and start the presentation. Also, as we did say, this presentation will end with Q&A, so I think we would like to save all the questions that you might have until the presentation is completed.
Thank you so much, Kiki, for the kind words about Karlstad and Värmland. Last time we were on stage, Johan reminded me that we actually had 13 acquisitions on this stage a while ago. We will not have 13 acquisitions today, thank God, but we will have hopefully a lot of interesting information about the past year and a little bit about the future. So without further ado, I would like to give you the operational and financial highlights of last year. So the group ended with net sales, the year ended with net sales just about 17 billion, which were 89% growth year over year. The organic growth were -7%, and the reason for that were mainly that in the previous year we had the release of Valheim that was an unexpected success that we did not have a similar title in last year. But I was really pleased to see the pro forma growth of our acquired companies actually grow 18% during last year. If you're splitting up the sales, the net sales grow close. The net sales of our games, our own games, were close to 14 billion during the year, which is more than 116% growth, and our net sales within partner publishing were about 3 billion. Our adjusted EBIT were 4.4 billion, which was a 54% growth year over year. And during the year, we released many titles. And on this slide, you can see a selected number of key revenue drivers. On the PC console side, we had release successfully of Biomutant, made in Stockholm. We had continued success of Gearbox title Borderlands 3. We had a fantastic success of Hot Wheels Unleashed, made by Milestone in Italy. Valheim continued to perform throughout the year, as well as Metro Exodus, our first AAA title that were released way earlier in our history, continued to perform very well. SnowRunner, we continue to build more content for, continue to perform well as Risk of Rain 2, one of Gearbox indie publishing titles, as well as Deep Rock Galactic, that is published by Coffee Stain and made by our friends at Ghost Ship Games in Denmark that also joined the group during the year. We also had a great success on mobile. Here is two examples, Sudoku.com and Blockudoku. In overall, our mobile games had more than 1.5 billion pro forma installs during the year. So 1.5 billion people downloaded our mobile games. During the year, we completed games, meaning released games that has been under development for a number of years, of the value of 1.2 billion. But we invested more than 3.5 billion during the year for future game releases. And at the end of the year, we had 6.1 billion in ongoing game development of games that are to be released in the future. In total, we had 223 game development projects under development at the end of the year. Across our 118 internal game development studios, as well as external studios. And 118 game development studios is a significant increase from the year before, where we had 60 studios. In total, we engaged more than 8,500 games developers at the end of the year, which is up from 5,000 the year before. And the total headcounts at the end of the year were more than 12,500, which is more doubling of the year before. We made a direct share issue of 6.2 billion in December on the back of the acquisition of Asmodee. Thank you all shareholders in this room for taking part of that. During the year, and I will come back to that, we entered into our widened strategy of transmedia with the acquisition of Asmodee and the tabletop segment, comics by Dark Horse. Finally, there is a note here about IFRS, and Johan will talk a little bit more about that, but we have spent a lot of time on the IFRS and main listing. A lot of people, as you heard, joined our growing ecosystem during the year, more than 6,000 people. Here you can see the logotypes of all the companies that joined the group during the year. In total, we made 35 acquisitions during last financial year. Now, the year ended end of March, and since end of March, we had a number of more family members joining the group. I'm extremely proud to show this slide. It's so many amazing people and companies and IPs underlying these businesses. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to take you through all of those companies today, but one day perhaps. If you look at the current state of the group today, this is our global presence. The group is made up of 12 operating groups. We are very close to 15,000 in total engaged headcounts, and we have 130 internal studios across the world. Here in Sweden, we have Coffee Stain, operated out from Skövde. We have Amplifier, operated out from Stockholm. We have, traveling west, we have our most recent operating group that heads up Crystal Dynamics and Eidos-Montréal, headquartered in London. We have in North America, Gearbox in Texas, and you will meet Randy Sohn. We have Dark Horse in Milwaukee. We have Freemode, our 11th very recently founded vertical Freemode out from California. We have our friends and gentlemen and shareholders, Saber Interactive at Fort Lauderdale in Florida. Going back to Europe, we have Asmodee out from Paris. We have the former Koch Media group, now called Plaion, out from Munich in Germany. We have our original business that I was part of funding in 2011, our friends at THQ Nordic in Vienna. Also in Germany, we have our first mobile business, DECA. And finally, we have the very successful and global leader in brain and puzzle games, Easybrain, headquartered in Cyprus. Without further ado, I will hand over to Johan.
Thank you, Lars. Yes, last year we continued to see a healthy growth in our net sales, growing with 89%, reaching 17 billion SEK. Adjusted EBIT also grew, growing with 54%, reaching 4.4 billion for the fiscal year. The growth was driven by a strong performance in all operative groups. We also maintained a high pace on an ambitious M&A agenda. So the number of operating groups grew from 6 to 10 during the year. And we also concluded 31 bolt-on acquisitions during the year. If you look at the balance sheet as per the end of March 2022, we have our operational balance sheet items on the left-hand side. And as you can see, we have a total of 9.3 billion of operational assets, and the majority of this is related to our games portfolio. Here we have invested 7.3 billion in total, where the vast majority is invested in ongoing unreleased games, 6.1 billion, and 1.2 billion is completed released games. If we look on the right-hand side, we have our financial balance sheet items, and it's worth noting that we have invested 68.4 billion in goodwill and IP rights stemming from acquisitions that has been made. This is financed by equity, 35.5 billion, and also provisions for additional considerations, 14.5 billion, as well as net debt of 14.4 billion. Looking at this current financial year that we are in, we expect to see a strong cash flow generation, and we also expect to be in line with our communicated financial leverage target at the end of this current financial year. Looking at the cash flow generation for last fiscal year, we generated 200 million in operating cash flow. So we are self-funded operationally, despite investing a record 3.5 billion into our games portfolio. On the financial side, we raised approximately 25 billion in increased borrowings from banks, 19 billion, and equity of 6 billion. And this was used to finance our M&A activities that had a cash outflow of approximately 34 billion during the year, where the transaction related to Asmodee as well as the Gearbox are the largest. At the end of the year, we had 5.8 billion in cash balance. If we take a step back and look at what the cash flow has been over the last 5.5 years, we can conclude that we are generating a positive operating cash flow of 1.8 billion. The vast majority of the operating cash flow generated was invested back into the business and our games development portfolio. On the financial side, we have raised approximately 44 billion in equity and debt, which has been used to finance our M&A activities, where 40 million has been spent. The investment also shows in our operational KPIs. We have doubled the headcount this last fiscal year. So we are about, at the end of this fiscal year, we were close to 12,800 people. The number of development projects that we are working on has increased from 160 to 223. And we have almost doubled the amount of internal studios, from 60 to 118. If you look at our growth investments on the right-hand side, one key priority for Embracer is to invest in order to pursue future profitable organic growth opportunities. If we see the investments over the last 5 years, we can conclude that in 2018 we invested 400 million SEK, and last fiscal year we invested 3.5 billion into our games portfolio. If you compare the investment with the value of the completed games, we are investing 2.5 to 3 times more than what we have released during this same time period. And as our games portfolio matures, we have expectations of significant positive impacts on profits and cash flow from releasing the games. Yes, that being said, we are entering the other section here, sustainability, and we would like to welcome Emma Ihre on stage, our head of sustainability. Welcome, Emma.
What? Didn't have. It's a green one, I guess.
It's the green one,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Just have to clean a little bit after you.
Sorry for making a mess.
No. Okay, thank you very much, Johan and Lars. My name is Emma Ihre, and I'm head of sustainability at Embracer Group, working together with Karin Edner and the rest of the team at the headquarters. So, if we look back 1 year, it is clear that we already then had a lot in place. We had established a sustainability strategy, smarter business framework. We have started to implement our sustainability efforts, and we reported to make it easier for our stakeholders to follow what we were doing and assess our performance. So what have we done during this year? To walk our talk, to manage our sustainability risks, and to develop our business so we actually do good for people and the planet. I don't think a day passes without us talking about us, like either internally or externally, talking about our values and how to implement our values in a very complex reality, and with lots of ethical dilemmas. But it's also a complex reality with lot of wonderful opportunities to do good. Our values, first of all, we are human beings in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day when we look ourselves in the mirror. Embracer has donated a considerable amount of money to aid organizations working in Ukraine. And action has been taken across the group to support those affected in the war. And those affected, we have supported our colleagues, our family members in Ukraine, but also in Russia and in Belarus. They are all affected, but in different ways. And we have intensified our stakeholder dialogue, and among many other things, we have strengthened our governance and risk analysis. And we have also started to work more strategically with climate risks. But what we love to do is developing great games and other entertainment. That's our passion, and that's actually the reason why we exist as a company. So is it really possible to do good and at the same time invest in our own success? To do both at the same time? We think it is, and I would like to show you one of many great initiatives where we as a company think and act broader, more long term. And I would so very much like to invite Cedric and Mitja to this stage in Sweden, in Stockholm, but I know you couldn't make it. So I invite you from Paris. Please, welcome. So this
Thank you
is
very
one
much.
example of a business case linked to sustainability. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Emma. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
So, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cedric. I'm the head of HR at Asmodee. And as you may know, we have recently joined the Embracer family, and we specialized in tabletop games, among other very interesting things. We're headquartered in Paris, as you've heard from the presentation before, hence the accent. I hope that's okay. And the idea here, very briefly, is that we offer you some perspective with our journey with Access Plus, together with Misha, and hopefully we'll tell you more about our sustainable journey. I guess at Asmodee, we exist to bring people together. That's why we get up in the morning. That's what drives us, and we want to do that in a sustainable and positive way, obviously. We have that belief that games can bring people together, as I said, and that there is game for everyone. And we mean everyone. And that's because we have that firm belief that we initiated back in 2018 a number of scientific research to get a better understanding of the benefits of gaming activities. These initiatives are known internally as Asmodee Research. And to keep it short, Access Plus that you see here on the screen, the logo of it, is a direct outcome of this Asmodee Research team. And in short, Access Plus is a studio that adapts some of our Asmodee iconic games to players living with cognitive disabilities. So we bring people together, and with Access Plus, we bring people together whatever their conditions. And we believe that we'll provide this equal and inclusive access to all of our games. Now, to get into the specifics of this initiative, the best is to hear from Misha directly, who's the man heading Asmodee Research and the director of Access Plus Studio. Over to you, Misha.
Thank you, Cedric, and thank you, Emma and Embracer, for this opportunity. So I'm Misha, and I'm really pleased to be there with you all today. As Cedric said, at Asmodee, we believe that everyone, no matter their condition, should have access to the joy and benefit of tabletop games. With Access Plus, we are more than happy to carry an inclusive vision of gaming within the group. With Access Plus, we are working with academics, healthcare experts, to bring a range as inclusive and accessible as possible to a wide audience, from children to adults and the elderly, including people living with cognitive disabilities, such as autism spectrum, Alzheimer, ADHD, or depression, for instance. To stimulate their cognitive function, spark positive emotion, and foster social interaction. All our adaptations are based on scientific research, the input of professionals, and tested directly with patients. From A to Z, we are working hand-to-hand with our expert for the game selection and all the adaptation, such as the card and symbols are bigger to ease the handling and recognition, including several levels of difficulty within the box to assist the care providers, selecting pertinent event symbols or challenge that will have meaning for the players. And we have included expert recommendation in our rulebook and website to inform caregivers and patients of the benefit of these games. Since the creation, next slide, please. Since the creation of the studio, we have adapted 3 iconic games from our catalog: Double Spotted, Timeline, and Cortex. This is a concrete complementary between them in terms of gameplay and cognitive stimulation. These 3 titles will be released in the incoming weeks in France, Belgium, and Canada, and we are very pleased to make them available for a global audience and health professional as well, and we can feel the excitement here in the distribution unit. The team is already working on future adaptation and international localization for 2023. At the end, Access Plus titles are ideal games for health practitioners, schools, caregivers, families, and friends who have people with cognitive disabilities under their care. So thank you for listening, and please reach me if you have questions.
Thank you very, very much. And we look forward to that launch in a week then, and to follow your great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, we're not done. We already started a new year, and the coming year we will create even more value for you and for other stakeholders. And some of our tools for doing that is, of course, like Kiki said, investing in our great people. Making sure that we are always compliant with our various policies and working towards our sustainability goals. So we have many, many different tools in the box to create more value, to think and act broader and more long term. And as you know, and as Lars always says, we are here for the long term, and we know, we don't think, that treating people with respect and caring about the planet will pay off in the long run. Thank you very much. I just dare to, I have to leave it clean now after my comment. Okay, thank you
so much, Emma. I will try to clean the table here as well. So let's welcome our friend Randy from Texas. Randy, are you online?
Yes, I am, Lars.
Hey, how are you?
I'm perfect. How are you?
Not bad. So thank you for taking the time to tell us a little bit more about what's going on at Gearbox. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to you.
Thank you, Lars. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to talk to you today about the Gearbox Entertainment Company. I led my company to join the Embracer Group because I believe in Lars's vision of a decentralized collective of autonomous member companies that naturally diversify across mediums, across markets, products, and experiences. I believe that Lars's vision for the Embracer model is the best and fastest path to accelerate my mission to entertain the world. So I pledged my commitment to Lars and the Embracer model, and Lars pledged his commitment to empower me to build the Gearbox Entertainment Company of my dreams. Prior to joining the Embracer Group, we had already demonstrated success in IP building, transmedia development, product development, and publishing, and we had demonstrated our ability to scale our creative engine. But Gearbox acceleration was limited by the interests of traditional blue blood publishers. These guys had a particular idea of the kinds of games Gearbox should be limited to making and the pace at which we should do it with the brands that they were had rights to. With Embracer Group, the future power of the Gearbox Entertainment Company is being stimulated and unleashed, and access to capital is a big part of that. Let's look at the next slide. It's my ambition to maximally develop the existing and established owned intellectual property that Gearbox has, while stimulating the ability to simultaneously create new original IP across a spectrum of genres, for a spectrum of different kinds of customers with a spectrum of different kinds of business models. To accomplish this, we must increase our capability and momentum. And I'm happy to report that the execution of our thesis is proving out to be successful. Since we have joined the Embracer Group, the entertainment company of Gearbox is accelerating in powerful ways, building an exciting future. Let's look at our human power. Next slide. When we joined the Embracer Group in 2021, the Gearbox Entertainment Company employed just over 500 people worldwide. Today, the global footprint of our talent exceeds 1,200 people. Our growth was primarily organic, fueled by our passion and drive to build the future of the Gearbox Entertainment Company with record-breaking growth in both our headquarters in Frisco, Texas, and our development studios in Quebec and Montreal. We also experienced growth supported by some exciting M&A activity that would not have been possible without Embracer, including the acquisition of the publishing slate and talent of Perfect World North America, now Gearbox Publishing San Francisco, the acquisition of Cryptic Studios, developers of Star Trek Online and Dungeons & Dragons Dragons, Neverwinter Online, and the acquisition of Lost Boys Interactive, which is a game development studio populated by veteran industry-leading talent and world-class capability that's supporting not only development within Gearbox Software, but also development for other leading developers and publishers around the world. The sum of this growth and what you will continue to see from Gearbox in the coming months of years is a key point of evidence in the successful execution of our strategy. I want to share with you the elements of the Gearbox Entertainment Company and how they are working together to help catapult us into the best possible future that we can imagine. Next slide. Gearbox Software, of course, is the development and production unit of the Gearbox Entertainment Company that I founded in 1999 and is currently led by Mr. Steve Jones. Gearbox Software achieved a major victory this past year with the launch of a new franchise, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Next slide. Wonderlands shattered all of our target expectations, both critically and commercially, and I'm thrilled to report that in addition to great financial rewards from this victory that will be coming our way in the coming quarters, we have established a firm beachhead, and we now clearly have a new franchise on our hands, with future experiences already under development at Gearbox. Next slide. Some of you noticed that I was on stage again post-pandemic at Opening Night Live and Gamescom recently in Germany, where I announced with Jeff Keighley there new Tales from the Borderlands. I am very excited about this new Borderlands video game. It will launch this October on all leading platforms, including the Nintendo Switch. Let's go to the next slide. Of course, Gearbox Publishing is the commercialization unit of the Gearbox Entertainment Company, and it's led by Mr. Steve Gibson. Next slide. Gearbox Publishing has brought to market a spectrum of interesting and successful titles, including most recently in the fiscal year we're talking about, Risk of Rain 2, Tribes of Midgard, and Have a Nice Death. And these titles have exceeded our expectations. Next slide. One of my most anticipated new projects coming from Gearbox Publishing is Homeworld 3. It's shaping up to be something very special, a sequel many years in the making that's very highly anticipated from a loyal and dedicated Homeworld fan base that helped the franchise earn more than 50 Game of the Year awards to become, as best as I can tell, the highest rated strategy game franchise of all time. And we're coming with Homeworld 3 soon. Next slide. Gearbox Publishing also has several unannounced titles in its lineup, and I want to make the point that the power, range, and capability of the Gearbox Publishing team is growing to where we have the capacity now to compete with the largest publishers in our industry and bring to market AAA video games at any scale across all leading platforms with world-class marketing and sales. So note that the quality and success of our products and the profit margins of our development efforts will be accelerating as more and more Gearbox brands and more Gearbox Software developed games are brought to market by Gearbox Publishing in the future. Next slide. A brief look ahead. I'm going to talk more about this in a minute, but look, we've got a number of known and announced titles coming in the immediate future from Gearbox, with 10 AAA titles spanning both established and original IP and development at Gearbox Software, and more than 24 SKUs in the future lineup with Gearbox Publishing. I'll make more comments about our future in my closing remarks in just a moment, so let's continue going through our key verticals. Next slide. One thing I am very excited about from the last year is that we officially formed one of our newest business verticals, Gearbox Studios, which is leading transmedia projects in film and television for the Gearbox Entertainment Company. I've personally taken the role of president of Gearbox Studios as I continue to establish and build this new group. Here are some of our already announced early achievements. Next slide. The Borderlands motion picture with Lionsgate Entertainment. We completed principal photography in 2021, and we're now in post-production. I'm very, very excited about the work that I have been able to do with the talented team at Arad Productions, director Eli Roth, and actors Cate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, Jamie Lee Curtis, Jack Black, absolute legends with other very talented cast and crew member working from Craig Mazin's awesome script. When this film enters the commercialization and promotion phase, I am confident that our studio partners at Lionsgate will bring the thunder. The entire world of people that enjoy movies will come to know and appreciate the Borderlands brand, and this will be a boon to the future of our franchise. Next slide. It was also recently announced that Gearbox Studios has partnered with Legendary Entertainment to bring Duke Nukem to the big screen. We're just getting started with Gearbox Studios, so you can expect action across all of our IP and for new IP to be developed with transmedia plans in mind or actually already in hand. Next slide. To support our transmedia franchise planning and our full spectrum strategy, last year also saw the formation of Gearbox Properties, led by longtime Gearbox veteran producer and creative director Randy Varnell. Now, Gearbox Properties is a new business vertical at the Gearbox Entertainment, and it serves as the custodian of our intellectual properties, our franchises and brands across all projects in interactive, transmedia, and other consumer merchandise categories. Now, encompassed within Gearbox Properties are a number of centralized capabilities that serve each of the other verticals. You see, Gearbox Properties is future-focused with a full spectrum franchise-driven strategy. Now, in addition to managing franchise planning for existing franchises and brands, Gearbox Properties is also the birthplace of new IP that can be developed by Gearbox Software or Gearbox Studios and or brought to market by Gearbox Publishing. With that, let's take to the next slide. I want to talk about the future of Gearbox. With the increasingly powerful and accelerating capabilities of Gearbox Software, Gearbox Publishing, Gearbox Studios, and Gearbox Properties, the Gearbox Entertainment Company is building an exciting and prosperous future, well-positioned to not only maximizing Gearbox existing and new IP, but also to help support the maximization of IP within other Embracer Group companies. We believe that great entertainment, great stories and characters and interactive experiences can delight different audiences across different mediums and with different business models. And we believe that by creating, supporting, and synchronizing and amplifying different experiential manifestations of our creativity, that all of our applications will be lifted and benefited. My vision is to maximize IP through the development and commercialization of manifestations of our IP in many mediums, to many different kinds of customers, in many different kinds of places. And success depends upon the best talent for each respective manifestation. We live in a world where most intellectual property is singularly developed from a specific medium as a starting point and only rarely adapted to other mediums. And I think that the Embracer Group is extremely well positioned to change all of that. We have some of the greatest intellectual property in the world, with everything like at Gearbox with Homeworld and Borderlands, to the Embracer Group at large with Lord of the Rings and Tomb Raider. We have powerful IP that is dormant and not yet maximizing, and we are creating new intellectual property every day. We have some of the greatest talent in the world in areas of interactive entertainment with Gearbox Software and other Embracer Group developers. And we have some of the greatest talent in the world with graphic novels and comic books and story and character development with Dark Horse. We have some of the greatest talent in the world with board games and tabletop experiences with Asmodee. And we have talent in mobile, and we have talent in hyper casual. And I'm just scratching the surface. It's beyond the scope of my time here today to completely articulate the full capabilities of the Embracer Group. So for my part, the Gearbox Entertainment Company has at least 5 new games with existing IP in development, AAA games, and an additional 5 new AAA titles with new original IP in active development at Gearbox Software, with many more in various stages of incubation and development. And excitingly, there are over 24 new titles on the slate for Gearbox Publishing, with many more in various stages of incubation and development. So finally, I want to point out that I have also been leading several efforts in collaboration with several other powerfully specialized companies within the Embracer Group. And the idea is to build new avenues of product, franchise, and IP development across mediums, simultaneously building a franchise plan where the IP is optimized for the various manifestations we can imagine down the road. And I believe that will contribute to the proof of the power of the Embracer Group strategy in the years to come. So I am absolutely thrilled for the road ahead, and I'm excited to be a part, just my part, of helping to lead us there. And I'm grateful to be part of the Embracer Group with Lars's vision, enabling and amplifying the success that is very plainly ahead of us. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Lars, for your time today. Cheers.
Thank you, Randy. You are fantastic. And you're always creating some new headlines, so let's see.
Hey, I've got exciting stuff, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Thanks for everything you've done to help me accelerate and amplify Gearbox vision.
Yeah, thank you so much, Randy. And let's move on to next point on the agenda, Newzoo. We had last year, we had the honor to welcome our external market research company, presenting, and I think it was very worthwhile for all shareholders to understand more about the overall global games market. So this is an external presentation. This is not the official Embracer standpoint on the market. So this is from Newzoo. Tom Wyman.
Hi, Lars.
Hey.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for re-inviting me.
Honor. I think we have a support changing slides, so I will leave it over to you.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for having me. Indeed, I'm here to present Newzoo's take on the global games market this year, but also contextualize it to the past few years and looking to the years ahead. Just for a brief introduction, Newzoo is a games market specialist market research firm. The data that I'm showing you today comes from our global games market report. But in addition to that, we also do direct consumer research and engagement-based data. Next slide, please. So starting with the year in gaming today, and starting with the consumer-generated revenues in the games market, this is a global view. This year, the worldwide games market will generate 196.8 billion. That's plus 2.1% growth from last year. And I'll start us off saying our revenue scope is all consumer spending on game software, whether that be physical or digital, full games, in-game spending, and subscription services across all platforms and all segments. 2.1% growth for the year. It's not as good as it has been the past 2 years, but those 2 years were particularly good for games because of people being locked at home and having no access to other entertainment options. So with that in mind, the fact that the market is still growing even this year, or we forecast it still to grow this year, is a testament to its strength. Diving into what that means by segment and what some of these growth drivers are, I put some of the information there on the right of this slide. So let's start with PC, plus 0.3% year-on-year growth. So really that's a flat market, a bit healthier if you zoom in just on the download and box PC games, because the browser PC game segment is declining and has been declining for a while. What are some of the revenue drivers here? I think to put that in context to the other traditional gaming segment, console, because PC gaming revenue is largely generated by live service games. If you look at the top 10 games or top 20 games generating revenue for PC, most of those are live service titles. Any disruption or delay in game development hits the PC market relatively less hard than it does console market. But there is still the effect of games being delayed into 2023, sometimes even 2024, that limits the growth potential of PC games this year. The same is true for the supply chain disruptions, meaning that people cannot get their hands, or players cannot get their hands on the latest PC gaming components. That is starting to get better, but there is still more demand than there is supply for many high-end PC gaming components. And the simple equation there is, if people have new hardware, they tend to buy more software. Therefore, if they cannot get their hands on new hardware, they tend to spend less on new software. And now I'm going to move over to console, because it's an extension of the same story. So we forecast a console market to shrink slightly this year, just minus 2.2% year-on-year growth, still generating almost 53 billion in a year, and more than a quarter of the total games revenue. So a very healthy market, but not the best year for console gaming. And there's three main drivers for that. So first of all, this year we have not as many blockbuster releases as we had in the past years, and console, as opposed to PC and definitely mobile gaming, is a hit-driven market. Less so than it has been in the past because of live services, because of DLC, because of in-game spending, but still definitely more so than PC and console gaming. So with less releases hitting the market, that just means less spending on console games. The same, what is happening here is because the new consoles from Sony and Microsoft are still hard to purchase, so the supply has not yet caught up to demand. It means that the install base is lower now than what it would be if the console cycle would have evolved normally. So there's a slow ramp up of the install base, meaning people don't have new consoles, therefore they don't buy console or they don't buy content for that console. What is offsetting some of these declining factors is the continued growth of subscription services and free-to-play in consoles. So like I said, it's no longer as hit-driven and seasonal as it once was. The saving grace for the market this year is mobile, although mobile gaming has its own struggles with the changes made to privacy regulation, user tracking, and mobile gaming, more so than PC and console gaming, relies on user tracking to identify high-value users and converting those into players. So there's been some changes there due to privacy regulation, due to changes made by some of the larger controlling players of the platform. But beside all that, it's still a growing market for the reasons listed here. The dominant business model, free-to-play, makes it easier to convert players, makes it easier in times of inflation. There's a lot of growth generated from emerging gaming regions. I'm talking Southeast Asia, Latin America, Middle East, and Northern Africa, which are all mobile-first regions. People get access to their own, to the internet via their own device on mobile first, play games or have the ability to play games via mobile first, and therefore mobile is the main way of gaming in these regions. The development cycles for mobile games typically, is a generalization, but typically are shorter and easier than they are compared to PC and console, particularly for AAA games. And therefore there was less of a disruption due to the shift of work from home of the past 2 years, which is why there are now so many delays, or a lot of delays for PC and console games. And because it's not a hit-driven market, even if there are less hits coming to the market, it doesn't impact spending as much. Now, I wanted to point out one thing, because this is a question that we at Newzoo have been getting a lot this year. There is, of course, a lot of news and talk about inflation and a potential recession hitting the market, and whether gaming can survive a recession. And our thesis on that is that gaming is not recession-proof. The saying recession-proof would insinuate that there's not going to be an impact of all. Of course, if people have less disposable income, then yes, they might spend less on gaming. But gaming is resilient to it compared to other forms of entertainment, but also compared to the past. And that is due to the multiple reasons, due to the role that gaming plays in people's life. For a lot of people, it's escapism. It's a way to get out of their daily struggles, or a way to step away from real life for a moment. It's very important, especially if you look towards more of the core gaming segments, and therefore people will give up other forms of entertainment before they stop spending on games. Plus, the rise of the subscription model and free-to-play monetization means that the barrier to pay for gaming content is a bit lower than it was during the last Great Recession in 2008 to 2011. Therefore, meaning, it's not recession-proof, because nothing really is, particularly an entertainment, a form of leisure, which gaming still is ultimately, but it is definitely resilient to a recession. Next slide, please. The same view here, but then the revenue split per region. Here we can clearly see that the Asia-Pacific region is the major revenue generator for the global games market. 49% of revenues this year will come from Asia-Pacific. It's also still a growth market, plus 2.7% year-on-year growth, mainly due to the growth of mobile gaming, which is very much coming from Asia-Pacific, which is a mobile-first region. Even in its mature markets, China, Japan, and South Korea are now mobile-first markets. Looking towards the Western mature markets, Europe at 70% of the global market, a bit over 34 billion generated. We see a flat market there. And that is because it's more, as opposed to Asia Pacific and the emerging regions, a PC and console market. And as we saw in the previous slides, PC is flat and console is even declining a bit. And in North America, similarly, almost flat for the same reasons as Europe, really. But there's a bit more mobile gaming in North America compared to Europe, which is even more so focused on PC and console gaming. Therefore, it's a bit more growth compared to Europe. The two emerging regions that I spoke about, Latin America, Middle East, and Africa, are growing very healthily and is what's driving most of the growth in the global games market this year. Next slide, please. Now, how does that look to the rest of the year? And this is where the good news starts coming in. The relative slowdown of growth that we see this year is just a temporary blip on the radar, according to our forecasts. And we're still on a trajectory for very healthy growth to 2025, which is when we forecast the games market will generate 225.7 billion. We expect that console gaming, PC gaming growth will pick up again next year when the release calendar is a lot fuller and the install base will continue to grow. With the ongoing growth of mobile gaming, that means all three segments are on a trajectory to very healthy growth. Next slide, please. Switching a bit how we're looking at things. Now we're no longer looking at how much people are spending, but how many people across the world are playing games. And this is always a very impressive number, I'd say. That this year we forecast by the end of the year 3.2 billion or 303,198 million people will play games across the world. And I'll say our definition of players here is all people who have played a digital or a video game on a PC or a console or a mobile device, via cloud gaming service, via VR standalone headset in the past 6 months. The main driver for growth in players is people in emerging markets getting access to the internet, getting access to gaming devices, which in most cases is a smartphone. Growing middle class, cheaper mobile internet infrastructure. There's little player growth when we look at regions like North America, Western Europe, even China, Japan, and South Korea, where gaming is largely matured. And if you have an interest in gaming, you will have started playing games. The exception there being 2020, which is why you would see a relatively large jump from 2019 to 2020, when a lot of players were either activated or reactivated because of the lockdown measures at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. The majority of players, as you can see on the right, play on mobile, even those that also play on console and play on PC, also play on mobile. 2.7 billion out of the 3.2 billion people that play games play on mobile. Looking at the other two segments, just over 1 billion PC players, which does also include browser players, which is, again, generalizing, but generally a more casual group of players. And console players only draws in 600 million players across the world, but as we can see from the revenue slide, generating more than 25% of the revenue generated in the games market. Growing to over 3.5 billion players in 2025, like I said earlier, driven by better internet infrastructure, mobile internet access, cheaper smartphones. Next slide, please. For the last part, taking a look at some of the more exciting growth markets in games, looking at the growth of VR games. And the chart we're looking at now is the consumer spending on VR games, not VR headsets. And our market sizing here only covers the headsets capable of 6 degrees of freedom and the VR game revenues generated to that headsets. And just typically this excludes either the enterprise headsets or the headsets that are only capable of 3 degrees of freedom, which is most smartphone-based headsets. And the easiest way to understand this is the 3 degrees of headsets. They only allow you to move your head, while 6 degrees of freedom headsets will also simulate the idea of walking or moving across a room. It's a very exciting compared to the overall games market. Oh, sorry, can we stick to the last slide? Can we go back to the last slide? Thank you. It's a very exciting market comparative to the rest of the market, quite small. 2.1 billion generated by VR games this year. It's impressive for the install base. People that do play VR games tend to spend quite a bit, and it's also growing very fast. You can see the CAGR on the right, almost 50% year-on-year or compound annual growth rate. So every 2 years, roughly, the market for VR game content has doubled. And we expect this to continue well into 2024, when VR game revenues will generate 3.7 billion. That concludes the market overview. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom. I have tons of questions, but unfortunately we don't have the time today, but I would like to have you back one day. So thank you for sharing this intelligence with us.
We'd be happy to. Thank you so much.
So let's dig a bit deeper and doing some deep dives into our business. And I would like to start with the strategy we set, the updated strategy we set at last annual meeting a year ago, embracing the transmedia strategic direction since September 2021. So we got working immediately to adapt to this strategy by doing a number of things. We started off acquiring our first MMO business, followed by the transformative acquisition of one of the leading board gaming, or the leading board gaming company in the world, Asmodee, based in Paris. Followed a few weeks later with the acquisition of one of the largest comic book publishers in North America, Dark Horse. Followed now this year by partly you can argue it is part of the transmedia strategy, that we made an acquisition of the assets from Square Enix, the carve-out of Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, including the iconic IPs of Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, and a number of others that also are very well positioned in this transmedia strategy. Followed by the, you can argue, transformative acquisition of Middle-earth Enterprises and the IP rights of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, based on the works of Tolkien. And why? Why did we adapt this strategy? So we believe, and you heard Randy a few minutes ago, we believe that it's building IP value, more personality and character for a world deepens the relationship and visibility with fans. And our fans is everything. Tabletop games, comic books, TV, film are very efficient channels to build IPs, whilst we believe gaming is the best channel to monetize it. And we see strong connection between these different forms of entertainment. So how? Building a transmedia company, creating an even stronger ecosystem based on diverse IP portfolio, new technologies and services complementing our core gaming business, from creation and execution to distribution, and cross-fertilizing IPs and strengthening licensing partnership across gaming categories, different content formats and platforms. So what? This integrated approach, together with our decentralized model, builds resilience and has proven to be attractive for both organic growth and growth by acquisition. We are well positioned to grow faster than the market in each of these segments, thanks to our IPs, our operating groups, and the investments we have made in recent years. A unique spread of risk within gaming gives us a strong starting point for stable, profitable growth. And I would like to share with you a few successful examples of transmedia expansion based on external IPs that we don't own within the group, but are very well known to many of you in this room. There are countless examples of successful transmedia expansions, as different forms of entertainment are converging. This slide illustrates some beloved, mainly external franchises that have expanded from video games to TV series, movies, comics, and tabletop games. For example, League of Legends from Riot has created a popular Netflix series. The critically acclaimed game The Last of Us, developed by Naughty Dog, is coming to both comics and TV series. Hit films franchises such as Mad Max and James Bond GoldenEye have become era-defining games. Meanwhile, many tabletop games, such as Warhammer 40K and Cyberpunk, have also led to substantial global game franchises. Looking at the group, we do have great examples of transmedia execution within the group. Looking at Tomb Raider, the iconic IP created in 1996 that sold more than 88 million units, has made its way to movies, comics, books, and coming to animated pictures and tabletop games. We just heard Randy talking about Borderlands and what's happening with the Borderlands. And obviously there is the movie announced. There is also the spin-off, Tiny Tina Wonderlands, that successfully were released last year, as well as tabletop books and comics. And within Asmodee, we have Exploding Kittens, that obviously were a tabletop game that made it to mobile, now being announced being a TV series, and with many more plans. And looking at some examples of internal IPs with transmedia potential. And I have to note, this is not confirming movies or new games and stuff. It's just some examples. Not necessarily all of them has to become transmedia, but there is potential. Obviously, we have hundreds of IPs across the group. But here you can see some really strong IPs that I believe has great potential to not only be what they are from the beginning, but also to be adapted to other medias. Some of them here are announced, some of them are not announced yet. Johan.
Thank you,
leaving
Lars.
a bit transmedia to more financials.
Thank you very much. So we have done a follow-up of acquisitions made, and we have used data then running up to end of June this year. We have done in total 81 deals. The deals that has been part of the evaluation are the deals that have been part of the group for more than a year. So that's 52. On the left-hand side, you have what we call operative units and standalone companies, where it makes sense to talk about the adjusted EBIT on a trailing 12 months basis. And on the right-hand side, you have the studios that we have added to the group. In total, it's 18 operative units and 34 studios. The day one consideration for the operative units is 12.9 billion SEK. And the adjusted EBIT that these companies generated on a yearly basis at time of acquisition was 2.5 billion SEK. If we compare that to what they are generating as of end of June on a trailing 12 months basis, the corresponding number is 3.3 billion. So it's up 32% or 0.8 billion. It's worth noting that within the trailing 12 months adjusted EBIT, there is no material contribution from AAA games released during that time period, which obviously can have a large impact on the adjusted EBIT. It's also interesting to see that when a company joins Embracer, one of the rationale is to continue to invest in the company in order to accelerate the business plans. And we have added approximately 1,300 people to these companies organically since the time of acquisition. If we look on the right-hand side, focusing on the studios, obviously to evaluate the studio, you will need to have a bit longer time in order to see the performance of scheduled game releases. But part of the rationale, of course, of adding studios to Embracer is to increase the IP portfolio, to add development capabilities. So at time of closing, it was roughly 1,700 people in total of this over these 34 deals being added. There are also financial benefits of integrating backward. You will see capex savings on games or also royalty savings, depending on what relationship you have with the studio at time of acquisition. That being said, that it will take some time or longer to evaluate performance of a development studio, there are very good examples of studios and games where we have definitely exceeded the financial expectations. And to mention a few, we have Experiment 101 with Biomutant, Warhorse with Kingdom Come Deliverance, Bugbear, Breakfast, Gunfire, Remnant, NWI with Insurgency Sandstorm, and 4A with Metro. Also here, we see that we continue to invest in the companies after they become part of the Embracer Group. So we have added close to 580 people to these studios post-closing. Looking at the overall picture, the overall evaluation, the performance of the 52 deals that has been evaluated has either met or exceeded management expectations, with one exception.
Thank you.
Yes, as both Kiki and Lars mentioned earlier, we are currently involved in a large project. It's about changing the listing venue to a regulated market. Just to give you a flair on the size, it involves all 12 operative groups. It's more than 300 legal entities, part of the project, over 50 jurisdictions. We have a very thorough project process that we follow, and the work is split in 7 work streams. At the start of the project, we had identified 140 plus activities in the action tracker that needed to be done, and 53 milestones. The rationale for engaging and initiating this project is to broaden the shareholder base of Embracer, increase liquidity in our share, as well as to make Embracer better known worldwide. It also allows us for share buyback programs, and it will overall increase the governance structure and control structure of the company. So at the end of the day, making Embracer a better company. We have been moving along according to our time plan, and as of today, we can say happily that we are progressing according to time plan. And the ambition is to be ready for a listing at Nasdaq Stockholm main market by the end of this year. Obviously, there are some key milestones ahead of us, but if they are reached as planned, it should work. We continue to build corporate capabilities at the parent company. So currently, or today, we are 50 people in the parent company. 4 years ago, we were 9.
And I feel we were
3. During the year, we have strengthened the team with these great people you see in front of you. They are providing us with increased competence and expertise in important areas such as treasury, sustainability, investor relations, corporate tax, data privacy, internal control, as well as information security. And it is the increased capabilities at the parent company, as well as in the operative groups, that allow us to initiate and execute on large projects, such as changing listing venue. Over to you, Lars.
Thank you, Johan. I will try to wrap this up, but I would like to just show a slide showing our current position of Embracer Group 2022. And I'm normally trying to be humble, but someone asked me to put a globally leading position within AA, single A, indie development and publishing. That's the reality. We're having a leading position in co-publishing and work-for-hire development. A leading position in mobile game or ad-based, ad-monetized mobile games, as well as board games development and publishing and global tabletop distribution. Regionally, we have a leading position within comics, video games distribution, and film distribution. And we have created and acquired and built sizable capabilities within AAA development and publishing. And we just got started on retro gaming with some ambitious plans, as well as we've been doing a lot of what we define as asset care over the past year, bringing older games and IPs back to new platforms. And I would like to share a few closing remarks with you. The strategy of empowering great entrepreneurs and creators continues to be successful. We believe this is a superior operating model for building a sustainable and long-term group within a creative industry. We firmly believe that empowering great people to make their own decisions is the best model to drive profitable organic growth that will outpace the overall market. The group is strategically in a strong position Today, we have more than 10,000 highly skilled game developers engaged in creating the largest pipeline of games across the industry. With the opportunity to build deeper strategic partnerships, we have a significant opportunity to notably improve cash flows, increase margins, and give better predictability going forward. We will continue to invest for long-term organic growth by allocating capital to games with high expected return on investment, as well as other growth initiatives within entertainment and services. The group will grow our pipeline of transmedia projects based on our own IPs across the group and cooperate between segments to create new transmedia IPs with a plan for PC console, mobile, tabletop comics, books, and with partners within film and TV. We expect to maintain, but not materially expand, the current scope of our business, and to solidify our existing position across PC console, mobile, tabletop, entertainment and services throughout complementary, value-accretive bolt-on acquisitions. We continue to optimize the company for long-term growth of adjusted earnings per share and free cash flow per share. Investments in organic growth will be the key driver of this, with gradually improving free cash flow as our games portfolio matures. However, we need to realize and adapt to the fact that the world has changed for the worse since last annual general meeting a year ago, becoming darker in recent months. We need to adapt to the challenges of geopolitical and social issues around the world and the microeconomic reality. The increased cost of capital will impact our business going forward. Factors such as decreased consumer spending due to less disposable incomes and uncertainty, inflation, increased interest rates, our lower share price, and changed global capital flows from growth investments have all impacted our business. The adjustments in the cost of capital will, compared to before, require current and future investments to have a higher minimum hurdle with a safety margin to justify the capital allocation than before. We need to continue to be sharply focused on the execution of our ongoing businesses around the world. The management and the board of directors will continue to review the performance of operating groups to optimize capital allocation within and between operative groups, while providing support and guidance to each operating unit. My experience is that difficult times create the greatest opportunities. I'm committed to keeping financial discipline and a continued strong balance sheet. We are on a journey together that has been amazing. We are now passing some bumpy roads, but I'm very confident that there will be, past this challenge, an even stronger group in the future. So with that said, and sorry for showing this slide and having you to read all this as well, I would like to put myself in the sofa with Simon. I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Glad to be back, and welcome to the shares. There was some very interesting presentations here, and starting off the Q&A, I just want to say that for all of you on the web, you can still post your questions, and I will go through them later. And for you in the audience here in Karlstad, you will also be able to ask questions later on. But I will start with a few of my own. And maybe I should start with Lars. What are you the most happy about the past year? And for you, one, I know your answer. I think.
I think there is so many fantastic things happening across the group. So it's like picking your children.
You can pick
kind
a
of
few.
Impossible. No, but I just think there is so much success being created, and I'm glad to see many new IPs being created and many new successful games being launched. Many fantastic people joining the group. So I think that makes me smile. But as you just heard, there is also challenges. I've been spending more time on geopolitical and social issues the past year than ever before. And there's other things. So the daily agenda is for sure full.
All right. And maybe a question on the overall market here, because as a group, you have a very wide scope. You cover a lot of ground in the entertainment market, especially in gaming. So my question is, what do you see currently in like a broader theme about the consumer? We know that the consumer sentiment is very weak right now. But what do you see compared to previous years and also before the pandemic?
Obviously, I'm bullish on the gaming market. I think there is a lot of excitement about gaming, and there is still, the billions of players out there that engages. And if you are able to pull off a great release, you will have immediately some amazing traction. So I think the underlying market is strong. Now the consumer spending is obviously more marginal effect currently, but having the size of the business, even 1% or a slight decrease could have an impact. So I think that is obviously something we are trying to adapt to, as I just stated, and I think there are some positive signs. I think there is more signs now that there is a better flow of new hardware coming to the market that will help the console. I think more than we were expecting a few months ago. So I think that's positive now also for the holiday season. And I think for overall market, there are some amazing games coming out, not only from Embracer, but from our peers, that I think will bring back the market to more positive numbers in the end of the year.
Okay. And I want to talk a bit about Saints Row. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you have said or written that you feel quite confident financially about the game. And I was just wondering if you could provide us with an update on what you mean with that and what you see currently.
I think I stated before the release that we were confident in the financial profile of the investment. Obviously, personally, I had hoped for a greater reception of the game. It's been a very polarized view, and there is a lot of things that could be said in details around it, but I'm, at one hand, happy to see a lot of gamers and fans happy. At the same time, I'm a bit sad to see also fans not happy. So it's difficult. And I think we need to wait for the quarterly report in November to have like a more details around this. We are still fairly early in our release window and still collecting data, and there is a lot of bug fixing. There is more content coming. On the financial side, I know, or I'm confident we will make money on the investment. Would it have as great return of investment that we have seen in many other games? Not very likely, but we will make money. And that's a very good starting point, at least.
Indeed. And also, due to the response of the game, which I think surprised you a bit, maybe. Certainly surprised a lot of people.
Yeah.
Did that change your longer-term view for the franchise in any way?
You know, obviously you always want every installment and of any IP to be greater than the last one, but you know, what you do is you know, this is quite a process to evaluate your position, the outcome, and there is hundreds of people engaged in this, you know, game in a way within the group, and so I still have a great trust in those people, and I'm sure they will recommend things for the future.
Got it. And with the console supply ramping up, it could be a good holiday season for games, and Saints Row is probably one of the bigger releases this fall, so yeah, we'll have to see. Turning to other releases, we have, for example, Destroy All Humans recently, 2 reprobed. Also Way of the Hunter. What do you think about those releases? Are you happy with the response from the community, etc.?
Again, quite early to say. I think when we brought back Destroy All Humans the first time 2 years ago, I think there were more buzz around it and excitement from all those fans. Now, it's been a good reception from fans, but I think it's been harder to break through that noise. I think the game is great. They've done a fantastic job to bring that back to very high, you know, standard. Way of the Hunter is obviously a new IP in a niche market, built on a very experienced team that have made similar projects before. I'm hearing and getting data that there is a lot of engagement from a lot of players around the world, and the KPIs of the game is constantly seem to be doing well. So I think there is something good for the future there.
In terms of Tiny Tina, could you say anything more about the royalties for that game?
No, I think we need to wait for, you know, both our publishing partner, Gearbox team, and Johan's team to. I don't have any color on that, but as you heard, Randy, he's confident about he will have some financial benefits as well in the future.
I heard. Also on the Middle-earth acquisition and the Tolkien rights, what has the internal reaction been from studios?
I think it's been amazing. You know, and we never had so much outreach to, you know, any of our acquisitions as we had with this one, from what I understand. But, you know, in the respect of the team that have been working on this for 45 years, the deal is not closed yet. And the respect of the works and Tolkien Estate and all stakeholders, this is a long-term process, also to make things within the group. Obviously, I'm confident we will do games and games based on the properties in the future, but we just need to follow that process that this company have set up. But who wouldn't like to be working on such an iconic IP?
That's true. Johan, I like cash flows. I think you do as well. And what will the major changes in terms of free cash flow be? This ongoing year versus the past, you would say?
I think so. We have, if you look at this current year, we have communicated a guidance for what we believe our adjusted EBIT will arrive at, and that's a quite step up if you compare it to where we have been, which will also have a positive impact on cash flows. So I think that's the main driver. We have commenting a bit on seasonality. It's I think from a seasonality perspective, looking at the cash flow generation during this fiscal year, we believe that the second half of the year, so Q3, Q4, will be the main contributions. And between those, I think we'll see most of it in the beginning of Q4, cash flow-wise. Obviously, we have added a highly cash flow generated business in Asmodee. But they are generating the majority of their profits in Q3. And of course, following that, they will generate the cash flow.
And you don't have any kind of color to give on cash conversion, maybe longer term from your guided adjusted EBIT?
No, so we haven't given that guidance. Of course, as we say, we as long as we have investment opportunities to invest for profitable future organic growth, that's something that we will do. But I think that also, despite investing into the organic growth opportunities, we will generate cash flow without giving you an exact number on the cash conversion.
Thanks. Before I open for the audience, can you walk through the steps before you can list on Nasdaq main list?
The 140. No. So obviously, I mean, ahead of us there are a couple. So we need to pass through a stock exchange audit. That's something. We need to transition to IFRS, which we did in Q1. But you have the stock exchange auditor. We have the prospectus that needs to be compiled. And there is a formal acceptance process, of course, that you need to adhere to from the stock exchange.
Got it. So do we have any questions from the audience here? I guess we have some kind of mic somewhere. Just raise your hand. We have the mic and... Okay, raise your hand, please, if we have any questions. Otherwise... doesn't look like it.
We're running a bit over time, Simon, so I don't...
Yeah, I will check the web instead. We have some questions here from the audience. And we have one from Johan Ö. And he says, you give many of the acquired companies the opportunity to grow their workforce and multiply it by 2 or even 3 within few years from getting acquired by Embracer. How can you assure that companies that have no experience in growing their headcounts and working on multiple projects simultaneously can handle that transition in a good way once they get Embracer funding?
Obviously, more or less all those companies being acquired are within the operating groups, and within the operating groups there is, very experienced management teams and processes. In general, our games development across the group are managed by our 20+ studios that manages the games development together with the games development studio, whether that is internal or external. But you know, you need to be humble. Obviously, when you add a lot of new talents, there is sometimes growing pains, but so far I think, and I think this is shown by our employee survey, by the execution of the work they've done in many cases. I think overall I'm confident in that process. And as you know, we are spread out. Johan just said that we are more than 300 legal entities. Not all of them have employees, but there is a lot of companies and different workplaces and HR and processes. So it's not like a centralized approach where we here in Karlstad, managing this daily on a daily basis.
Thank you. Do we have some more time, or?
Yes, let's do 2 more questions, and then we need to head back to the AGM.
The audience, do we have something? Okay. So I was wondering, in recent couple quarters, the ROI on your game releases have been a bit lower for different reasons, maybe. But what do you see there? Are there explanations behind this? Are you discussing this internally? And what are you expecting yourselves?
Yeah, well, obviously I noticed that myself. And we are discussing the outcomes of the releases, and especially it's something that are being evaluated within the operating groups and the publishing structures. Few things, we have a very wide pipeline of games, and from time to time you would have more chunks of games with a higher return of investment coming through the market. So I think it's a bit. Now we had during the summer, for example, or earlier part of this year, we had a number of releases that had a lower return of investment profile coming through. So I think that is kind of the main reason. It has not been a surprise to me, many of them, so it's kind of been in line with my expectations. Looking ahead, I'm very confident, even though without providing a guidance on this, I'm very confident in the pipeline and the return of investment. We all know that Saints Row, for example, were one of the harder ones in terms of return of investment. Now that's in a way behind us, and we will make money. And now there is tons of more titles which has a significantly higher return of investment.
Interesting. Yes. And the last one from me then. In Asmodee, that company has benefited quite handsomely from strong card segments recently. Do you think that's part of that business could be more sensitive for a weaker consumer versus the traditional board game segment, which has been quite recession-proof historically?
I think in general, board gaming provides a fantastic value of entertainment to people and families, and obviously we are following the market. We know when we entered into the transaction that we did not expect any growth in that market this year. Remains to be seen the outcome of it. Now, Asmodee, and the beauty of Asmodee, they are engaged globally, they have so many IPs, and they have the balance of board gaming and trading cards. Now, trading cards so far this year has been having some strong momentum. You know, in the end of the day, I look at that business and the business they're doing and the cash flows out of it. And I'm sure over the coming decade, they will have years with stronger board games and some stronger trading card games. So I'm not overly concerned. But obviously, I hope and I'm confident that they will have a strong holiday seasons and that will convert into cash flow.
Thank you. And with that, I think we conclude the Q&A session.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. I leave over to Kiki.
Thank you very much. I hope you all get as excited as I when I listen to the execution of this transmedia strategy. I think there are huge opportunities there. Now we are running late, but we have the formal part still to go through. And that's something we get excited about as well, don't you, Jan? Yeah. And we have now come to point number 8 on the agenda, and that is a presentation of the accounting documents. Now, the annual report for financial year 21-22 has been published on the company's website since the 8th of July. And it's also been available at the company's offices, and it's been available, and it is available here today. So may I then ask our main responsible auditor, Johan Eklund at EY, to present the auditor's report. Welcome, Johan.
Thank you, Kiki. Okay. Well, my name is Johan Eklund, and I am, as Kiki said, the main responsible auditor for the EY audit engagement at Embracer Group. And I will try to first give you a short briefing of our audit work performed for the year that we have been through. And then I will give you some highlights from our actual recommendation that which is in the formal audit report. So, we have performed the audit for Embracer Group according to ISA. It's International Standards of Auditing, and also, of course, according to Swedish standards. And this is mainly based on risk and materiality. The group audit has been coordinated by us here at EY in Karlstad, and that includes that we send out instructions to our different component teams around the world, and then, of course, also receive reporting back to us. And after this, we have following meetings and so on. And we have meetings both with, of course, the group management, but also with local audit teams and local management. And in addition to this, we also have, I attend to meetings with the audit committee and also selected meetings with the board. And as presented earlier by management here, you're seeing some highlights from the income statement and the balance sheet. And as you understand, there are some focus areas in our audit, mainly then related to acquisitions, PPAs, of course, normal audit procedures as revenue streams and so on. And we put quite a lot of work also on the intangible asset side. I think the intangible asset side is about, it's absolutely the biggest part of the balance sheet. And all the work on these areas includes, of course, testing and evaluating used accounting principles and so on. But we also focus a lot of internal control and also verification of supporting documents. So, based on this, we have released our formal audit report, and you have probably seen it in the on page 149. It's a lot of pages in the annual report, but on page 149 you can see the audit report. And just to summarize, we give there some recommendations to this AGM, And firstly, our first recommendation is that we recommend that the general meeting adopts the income statement and balance sheet for both the group and the parent company. And secondly, we recommend that the general meeting appropriate the profit in accordance with the suggested proposal, and also that the members of the board and the managing director shall be discharged from liability for the financial year. And this has been released in July this year. So that was a short presentation. Is there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Johan.
Thanks.
And no questions. I then find that the annual report and the consolidated accounts, as well as the auditor's reports, have been presented. Now we will move on to number 9 on the item number 9 on the agenda. And as we heard, the auditor endorses that the annual general meeting approves the presented income statement and balance sheets, as well as the consolidated income statement and consolidated balance sheet. Can the annual general meeting approve the presented income statements and balance sheets? The board of directors' proposal regarding the allocation of the company's results is also included in the annual report and has been included in the notice for the meeting. The board proposes that no dividend shall be paid for the financial year 21-22. The board proposes that the funds available to the annual general meeting of approximately 46.9 billion SEK shall be carried forward. Does anyone have any comments on that or any questions about that? No. As we also heard, the auditors endorses that the annual general meeting resolves to allocate the company's profits in accordance with the board's proposal. Can the annual general meeting resolve that the approved results is allocated in accordance with the board's proposal, which was also endorsed by the auditor? We have previously heard that the auditor also endorses discharge from liability. I would also like to inform the annual general meeting that the board members and the CEO may not participate in the resolutions concerning each of themselves. Can the annual general meeting, in accordance with the auditor's endorsement, approve discharge from liability to the directors of the board and the managing director for the past financial year? Considering the votes provided in advance, we can note then that the resolution is passed with sufficient majority. We note that the directors of the board and the managing director did not participate in the resolution as far as they were concerned as well. Now we move then on to proposal for items 10 to 12. And that is, we should now determine the number of directors and auditors, fees to the board of directors and the auditors, and the election of the board of directors and auditors. And the proposals have been available since the 18th of August on the company's website, in the notice, and also they have been available here today. So now I would like to ask you, Ian, to present the proposals from the board for all these items, and then we will manage to vote on all of them together. Is that okay?
Thank you, Kiki. So we have proposals regarding the board coming from Lars Wingefors AB, the majority owner of the company, and then the proposals regarding the auditor come from the board. So to summarize quickly here, we start off with the determination of numbers of directors and auditors, where we have the proposal that is 7 directors without deputies and 1 registered audit firm. And as far as goes for the remuneration, fees, we have a total remuneration of 5,475,000 for the board, which is divided in 600,000 for each director and 2.1 million for the chair of the board. And then the proposals for the committees are as follows, where each member of the Audit and Sustainability Committee shall receive 175,000, and the chair of that committee 275,000. And as for the Remuneration Committee, the proposal is 100,000 for each member and 150,000 for the chair. And all of these amounts are in Swedish krona and nothing else. And the proposal for the auditor's fee is that the fee shall be paid in according to invoice. And finally, item number 12, which is election of the board and the auditor. And we have a proposal where David Garner, Jakob Jonmyren, Matthew Karch, Erik Stenberg, Kicki Walljelund, and Lars Wingefors are proposed to be re-elected. We have a proposal to elect Cecilia Driving as a new member of the board, and Ulf Hjalmarsson has notified that he's not available for re-election. And as chair of the board, Kicki Walljelund is proposed to continue as well. EY is proposed to be re-elected as auditors, and Johan Eklund is also still appointed by EY to continue as main responsible auditor. That summarizes all the proposals, and I leave it over to you.
Thank you, Jan. Do we have any questions about the proposals? Okay. You may know that in a public limited liability company, the chair of the general meeting must, before the board is elected, provide information to the general. I said that so many times. To the general meeting about which assignment the person to whom the election applies holds in other companies. But in order to save some time here, I would like to refer to the information about the directors in the annual report, as you probably have seen, and in the notice, and ask if you have any specific questions about that. If not, since we don't have a Matt Karch here today, and you have you have noticed that David is here today. It's the first annual general meeting you attend, actually, in person, I would say. And we also have Jakob, as you saw earlier, and we have Eric and Lars, of course. Now, I think you should take the opportunity to actually grab them after here when we have some drinks, especially David, as you are not here that often. But of course, I would like to introduce to you Cecilia Driving, that is proposed as a new member of the board. And Cecilia, you may want to say a few words.
Well, I'm Cecilia Driving, and currently I'm Executive Vice President and CFO.
Mikrofon. Great, thank you. Sorry about that, Cecilia.
Do you hear me now? Great. I'm Cecilia Driving, and currently I'm Executive Vice President and CFO of Biovika International. That's a company within biotech and within monitoring of breast cancer, so it's in life science. And I'm also a member of the board of Ovzon, that's a satellite communication company, where I'm also auditing the chair of the audit committee. So that's more in tech. And now I'm excited to join Embracer Group and the Embracer family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. We are as excited as you are. Thank you. Prior to today's general meeting, all but Ulf Hjalmarsson of the other current directors have announced that we were available for re-election as directors. But I would like to take the opportunity to turn to Ulf, even if he's not here, but I do know that he's watching. He's actually on a trip abroad, but he's listening into this. And of course, well, Ulf's been a member since 2018. And if I should describe Ulf, I would say he's been very thorough, thoughtful, and has a clear ethical compass. And I really would like to express our great thanks for his contribution to the board. Now, Ulf actually asked me to send his regard and a big thank you for the years he has participated in Embracer's board work. And he's saying like this, I promise to read this. It has been a fantastic, exciting time on the board, and above all, inspiring to meet all the people who have contributed to Embracer's development. Rarely have I seen such commitment and belief in what Embracer has achieved and will be able to achieve, both in its own business and in its industry. I would like to thank everyone I have met and wish both the company and all the employees the best of luck in their continued work. Know that you will succeed well in the future. So thank you, Ulf. So now we can move on, and you have now heard the proposals for item 10 to 12. And I will ask the meeting to approve all these items together. Okay, before we propose to voting, are there any other proposals for item 10 to 11 from you? No? Can the meeting then resolve in accordance with the proposals? Okay, I therefore find that until the end of next annual general meeting, the following persons have been elected as board of directors. Cecilia Driving, once again, very much welcome. And David Gardner, Jakob Jonmyren, Matthew Karch, Erik Stenberg, Kiki Valjelund, and Lars Wingefors. And I have also been re-elected as the chairman of the board of directors. And EY have been re-elected as auditor. I also would like to take the opportunity to inform the meeting who our audit and sustainability committee and remuneration committee will be composed by. The audit and sustainability committee will be, Cecilia will actually be the chair of that committee. And Jakob and myself will be member of the committee. The remuneration committee, Jakob will chair this year. Last year it was David. But David will still be in the committee and together with myself. Next point, number 13. Lars Wingefors AB proposed that the annual general meeting resolves to adopt principles and instructions for the appointment of a nomination committee. We haven't had that before, so that's new to us. And this proposal has also been included in the notice for the meeting, and it's been available on the company's website prior to this meeting, and it has also been distributed here today. So therefore, I do not intend to go through it in detail. Are there any questions regarding this proposal? Can the meeting then resolve in accordance with the proposal? Number 14, the board of directors has, after the recommendation from the remuneration committee, proposed that the annual general meeting adopts the guidelines for remuneration to senior executives. The proposal has also been included in the notice for the meeting and has also been available on the company's website prior to this meeting. And it has also been distributed here today. So therefore, I don't intend to go through that proposal either. But I am wondering, do we have any questions about that specific proposal? Can the annual general meeting then resolve in accordance with the proposal? Sorry? You pressed the button. The board of directors has proposed that the annual general meeting shall resolve on authorization for the board of directors to issue shares, convertibles, and/or warrants. The proposal has been included in the notice, and it has been available on our website, and it's also been distributed here today. So therefore, I will not intend to go through that proposal either. It can be noted that the authorization may comprise a maximum of 10% of the total number of shares in the company per day when the authorization is first used. Are there any questions about that specific proposal? Can the annual general meeting resolve in accordance with the proposal? Well, ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, with this meeting now, we can put 2021 behind us, which has been another stable year for Embracer. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for coming to Karlstad and for participating in the dialogues that we have had here today. And at the same time, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Lars and his entire team for a fantastic job. So thank you very much for coming, all of you, and I hope to see you here next week in sunny Karlstad. Thank you very much. Now, thank you. There are some drinks, but I have been told that we should go out that way, not this way. Was it? Yeah, yeah. So this way. Welcome.